Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And first on the list, and there's no way there's around that, is Trump's first 100 days. I'm going to throw it out to Dr. Eric Lopkin.
Well, you know, we started talking about this last week, and his 100 days have been unlike anything that we've seen prior. And I find some of the reactions absolutely hysterical, because you've got the folks on the left, of course, yelling that it was 100 days of hell.
Yeah, okay.
And in fact, Chuck Schumer actually said that on the Senate floor. So it's like, and he's going, chaos equals Trump. Trump equals chaos. Well, you know what?
I have to interject one thing because I want and I'm sure our listeners want your insight into this. Has Trump, and this part of the question is quasi rhetorical, gotten into their heads, and has he learned so much in his first term that, I mean, when you see Chuck Schumer, Jeffries, Booker will talk more about their sit-in later, but it almost becomes comical unless you're die-in-the-wool nutcase. I mean,
Trump,
there's no traction.
Trump has been living rent-free in their heads for 6 years already. And it is they are absolutely obsessed with Trump. And I think, honestly, it all goes back to the fact that they thought they were going to coronate Hillary Clinton as president, and he blew her out of the water.
And I also think, yes, I agree with that 100%, but it's beyond that. I think they represent the entrenched bureaucracy slash swamp, also the globalist elitists that have sown the seeds for America's decline since World War II. And Trump represents the end of their gravy train and the end of their comfy lifestyle. And I truly believe that's really at the heart of it. It started with Hillary, but it's ended with that.
I think it's more about the deep state than it is globalization. I think they are absolutely terrified that Trump is dismantling all of the mechanisms that they put in place to allow them to steal taxpayer money and fund it to their campaigns and their pet projects. And that's coming to an end. And I think it horrifies them.
And propel them to keep them in power, too.
Yes.
100% agree with that. I will throw a 10% elitist globalist. I think they've been on that gravy train along with some rhinos, but he's blowing up that whole thing. And if you want my honest opinion, if he succeeds, America's maybe not best days, but some really good days could be ahead of us. If he fails, especially when you look at, like your comment on this, through social media and other insights, and especially editorial. AOC looks like she is positioning herself for 2028. Your thoughts?
Yeah, AOC's positioning is laughable at best. You're going to
let me ask you one question, Dr. Lopkin, so we can better digest this. Okay, with normal people, do you think there's enough nutcases that she could actually accomplish something?
No, there's enough nutcases that she could win the Democratic nomination, but she'll never get past the general. There is nothing about her that will appeal to independents. And I mean, Republicans, obviously they're not going to vote for AOC. But there is nothing about her that is going to appeal to independents. And that is the swing. That is where Trump won the election. He focused on independents, on Democrats that had been forgotten by the party. He didn't bother doing much campaigning towards Republicans because he had that sewn up.
Okay, but he did run as a populist. Can't she, she's already doing this, but further position herself as a populist?
No, because she's already blown that. That ship has sailed. Everybody knows she's a socialist. She identifies herself as a democratic socialist. The fact that she could call herself a populist, but people already know who she is. And they know she was to the left of Kamala Harris.
So are we talking if she happens to squeeze, and she could? Here's what I really believe. I think the Democratic Party. You look at Ron Blagojevich, right? Former governor of Illinois, who was pardoned by Trump, but he believes that we've talked about this many times on Carnivore Bites that there's going to be no moderation. They're shifting further to the left. So give it, and I do believe that, by the way. If that is the case, and she does squeak out a nomination, are we looking at McGovern 2.0? By the way, he
Es-
lost
uh,
every state.
Essentially, yes. I mean, she is the next generation of McGovern. And I'm not completely convinced that the party is irredeemable and that they'll fall in line for AOC. I still honestly believe that Gretchen Whitmire is going to run for president. She's not, I mean, you can't call her a conservative by any stretch of the imagination, but she is much more moderate than AOC, and she's also so much more intelligent. I
Whoa,
think
whoa, whoa,
that's
whoa, 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 whoa. Lenin is more moderate than
well,
AOC,
yes,
and my cat Carl, who I love a lot greatly, is more intelligent. I'm dead serious. I'm
but
sure in any
that's the
kind of
key.
cognitive test, he could beat AOC. He
That
knows how to
is,
open doors. He can take care of himself. Go ahead.
but that's the key. AOC has never faced an actual debate. If she's going to run for president, she's going to have multiple debates during the primaries, and then she's going to have a debate during the general. Now, first of all, Whitmer will decimate her in a debate. And I think once the Democrats see that, they're going to go, oh, there's no way she can win a general. If they still decide to swing behind her, I don't know that there's anybody on the Republican side that she can beat in the debate. Never mind.
I believe if capital I, capital F, she squeaks out the nomination for the Democrat, she will be electrocuted in the electoral college. How do you like that?
Oh, yeah.
And I believe it will be maybe not the end, but pretty close. It will be life support for the Democratic Party. You're talking Whig Party 2.0, and that
Yeah,
is my honest
actually,
opinion.
I can think of one Republican she might be able to beat in a debate, but fortunately, she's not running for president in 2028, and that's Marjorie Taylor Greene.
You're probably right. Possibly.
Yeah.
Yes. So getting back to the first 100 days, I think there's some disruption, but with major change, there's always going to be disruption. I think the tariffs. I'm a free trader, but it wasn't free trade. And these agreements, NAFTA, the list can go on forever, info items, so to speak, have gutted out the middle class. and you have morons like Janet Yelton, right? A complete idiot with the rest of that moronic cabinet says, "Oh, it's only an illusion." We talked about this last week to
Yes.
bring back manufacturing. What the hell? Where are you? Like, do you know what's going on with AI? Do you know what's going on with robotics? Are you stupid? Which she is stupid,
Well,
by the
no.
way.
I mean, the answer
No,
to
she's a
that is
DEI.
no. They don't know what's going on in AI or robotics. They can barely understand what's going on Facebook. These are not folks that are at the top of their game, and that's the big problem. But you're also seeing, you mentioned the disruption. Yes, things are being disrupted. And this is for two main reasons. One, Trump is moving at a speed unheard of in politics. And this is something that neither side can quite understand because there was an interview done with someone from the National Review. Now, I think everybody will agree there's nothing liberal about the National Review.
At one time, yes.
And they were saying, one of the big problems that Trump is facing is that he hasn't gotten the tax bill across Congress yet. It's been 100 days. It took Obama with a super majority almost 2 years to get the ACA passed.
Mm-hmm.
This
Agreed.
is
No, and I think it's also. Let me just interject one other thought. I think the speed in which, and we talked about this last week, Trump is moving at is indicative of the kind of people he is and has in his cabinet because they're from the private sector. What Biden had were all basically lifers in either academia or some other
yes.
bullshit part of bureaucracy who knew absolutely nothing about the real world.
No,
Nothing.
the second part of what's causing all this disruption, and I find this absolutely hysterical, is because it's what everybody on both sides of the aisle has been asking for 20 years. Trump is the most transparent president we have ever had. He shows everything that they're doing at the time they're doing it. So when things change this quickly, like, well, wait a minute, he just said this and now it's that. Yes, because things have changed already and you're actually seeing it. The truth of the matter is, I don't think most of America actually wanted to see how the sausage is made.
True. Yes, true. And they're not used to this kind of activity. For them, chaos equals uncertainty. And I think they're uncomfortable. But I'm good with that because if things work out, then Democrats have more than Democrats have taken as big of a risk as Trump. How do you like this analysis? Because if things do work out, then they have more than egg on their face. It's almost like the media with the RussiaGate and the laptop and all this other crap. They will lose any credibility they have. And speaking of that, flipping for a little bit, did you happen to see the sit-in talking about losing? That was there's pathetic, and then there's beyond. There's not no such word as I can articulate. It was in another universe of being pathetic, another galaxy.
Yeah, some of the visuals that are coming out of the Democratic Party are absolutely hysterical. I mean, you had these folks on the steps of the Capitol singing. And first of all, these are folks that should obviously never sing. And this is not the first time. So if they're dead set on singing at these things, they for God's sakes need to invest in some vocal coaches to teach them how to sing. But
Mm-hmm.
they started singing on the steps of the Capitol, and you look at this visual, and I'm dating myself on this, but I swear you would think they were about to start singing "I'm Just a Bill."
They did.
It was no. I mean, this was.
No, they did.
Did they?
They
Oh,
did. They did. No, I know. I'm older than you are. I
oh,
know what you're talking about. And I think Joaquin Jeffries, no, it was Cory Booker,
oh
started to say,
my
yeah, I
gosh.
feel like, yes, that is a fact.
Oh God,
An absolute fact. Yes, that is a fact.
and
And
that's
I think
that's
it's
actually part of the problem the Democrats are facing right now, because you've got who's supporting them? They've got Joan Baez on tour. They've got with
Neil
Bernie,
Young.
Neil Young is on. It's like they're reliving their glory days of the 60s. Well, guess what? It's not the 60s anymore. You don't have a real cause, and you just look like out of step morons.
That is, you could not have said it any better. It's like welcome back to the night. They're totally. It's like the kid from high school that was the man. He was the best pitcher, got all the chicks, and now he's working at a gas station. When he goes to a party, what do you think he's talking about? How he filled a couple of tanks up with regular? No, remember when I struck out? Yeah, that's what they're doing. And by the way, that
Yes,
tour, yes, and the tour should be called be at least be sponsored by like Depends. That would be
Depends.
perfect.
Geritol. It's
Something of that
it
nature.
it is it
But
is a
yes,
ridiculous tour, and they keep touting the fact that, oh, they're bringing in thousands of people. No, they're
there was
not. If you
there were
take a
like
good
20
look,
people.
well, no, they're getting big crowds,
No, on the
but
steps there was only like
no,
20
no.
people. It was on the
Oh, no,
steps,
no, I'm not
yeah.
talking. No, no, I'm not talking about on the steps. I'm talking about
Okay.
Bernie and AOC's
Yeah.
tour. They're getting thousands of people at these
Paid.
rallies. So they think AOC, some of them are paid, but they took a page from Kamala Harris's playbook. They're not having just rallies. Those rallies are all being held in conjunction with a free concert. And people are going to the concert, and then they're starting to leave as soon as Bernie and AOC start talking.
Well, you know something that's very interesting, Dr. Lopkin, because I'm glad you brought it up because I was not aware of that, and I was thinking, what the hell's going on? And it's kind of interesting how the corporate media doesn't never says anything about that. It's these guys and gals, or AOC and Bernie are
Well, they
just
didn't. They
crushing
didn't
it.
say
They're
it.
like the Rolling Stones, 1975.
They didn't say anything about it when Harris was doing that during the campaign.
Flipping to that, though, what do you think of Harris making a speech, her first major speech? Hopefully, she won't be intoxicated on this one. Uh, so-called serious speech that's going to go after Trump, and she's also going to tee up a gubernatorial race. My humble opinion, first, before the doctor, I think the speech will be pathetic. I think I'm not sure she can win the governorship of California. If she does, best thing that ever happened to the Republican Party because she actually having to do something will be hysterical. And she's also only charging $25 for live stream. So
Well,
you might sell
that's
out pretty quickly. So I would go online right now, Dr. Lopkin,
well,
and put your credit card in.
that's the live stream. The
Live stream, yeah.
tickets to actually be there in person are ridiculously expensive, and I don't think she's going to fill the audience. There's already been speculation that the only people that are going to subscribe for the live stream are the mainstream media who have to cover it, and the absolute diehard Democrats. So you're not talking about a big audience. Also, and I'm not 100% sure of this one, but I did hear that she's not actually the one putting this speech together. Apparently,
Of course not.
she's being paid to do this.
You think she's actually capable of putting a speech together?
No, probably not. Well, I mean, if she's being paid for it, maybe if she has any
She has
sense,
writers.
which of course she doesn't, she'll have hired writers and producers to do this for her, so that all she has to do is read a teleprompter, which actually she's already proven she can't do.
I want to see some excerpts from this because I'm sure it'll be hysterical. My favorite part of Kamala is well, two favorite parts is her word salad, but I love it because she knows she lacks seriousness. People don't see her when she tries to be very serious and sullen. That cracks me up. And then you're prepared for something profound, and it's like yellow school buses are important. You're like, oh God, please. But it's all good. And speaking of all good, though, she was
Well,
part of the Biden. Go ahead.
she was part of the Biden administration's disaster, but you mentioned she's considering a run for the governor of California.
Hmm.
Allegedly, she's also considering another run for the White House.
Oh yeah,
Personally,
definitely.
I want to see her run for the White House again. Because again, I want to see her in a debate against Gretchen Whitmer. I want to
I
see
want to.
Whitmer just smack her around.
I think they all will. I don't think there's no love lost between the Democratic Party and her. The gloves
Well,
would
but
be off.
but Whitmer in particular, um, one of the recent books that came out from a Harris staffer went into detail how the Harris torpedoed Whitmer during the selection process for vice president because apparently Whitmer was one of the candidates and Harris's folks went out of their way to make sure Whitmer did not get this, that Whitmer, and then again when they had to replace Biden, her people made sure Whitmer was not on the short list. And again, the book goes into details about all the dirty tricks they did to make sure that she beat Whitmer out. That's why I want Gretchen Whitmer to have a chance at smacking her around.
I will watch that debate with popcorn and a cold bud. It'll be excellent. And I did mention the fact that obviously everyone knows that she was part of the Biden administration, but isn't it really interesting, possibly coincidental? I'm kidding about the coincidental. That now all of a sudden all these books are coming out. There was a media awards get together in New York, and someone won a Pulitzer or something for being so brave to come out, after the fact, obviously, that Trump was basically eating applesauce and everything, right? But isn't it really interesting that all these people, including Clyburn of, I believe, Maryland, saying that he just wasn't around Biden that much? I mean, I believe this is it's the biggest scandal in my lifetime, political scandal.
It is.
Could have been
This
nuclear war. This guy was
this
blowed
this
out.
this is literally bigger than Watergate was. Nobody knows who was in command of the White House, but it's pretty obvious it was not Biden. All of these senators and congressmen that are saying, well, we didn't know how bad he was because we didn't see him all that often. First of all, the fact that you didn't see him that often should have sent up red flags. The fact that he was not holding cabinet meetings on a regular basis should have sent up red flags. The fact that he was calling a lid at 4 o'clock when he didn't start his day until 10 should have sent up red flags. Not seeing him is not an excuse. There were all of this evidence that showed he was not in command. He was not even in control of his own faculties. And again, we reported that he supposedly had dementia in 2019.
And it was actually before that people, even 2017, people have suggested that, going back, almost 10 years ago. Quite interesting, huge scandal. And, the person that got the straw that broke the camel's back was George Clooney, who I really don't like. I think he's like a pretty boy who's, what, college dropout, but he thinks he's a Mensa candidate, and now he's playing Edward R. Murrow on Broadway, and he gives a little soliloquy about how the press has to be vigilant. And just shut up and act. And I don't know if what kind of roles you're going to get at this point. But anyway, his lovely wife, and I'm sure he married her because she checked all the boxes. She's hot, she's liberal, and she's anti-Semitic slash Israeli, and was a big force for the international court issuing that essentially a arrest warrant for Netanyahu. So basically, it's been reported that she might have trouble if she leaves America getting back in. Oh well, cry me a river.
Yeah, I feel so bad for her.
Awful.
But
And
I mean,
him. He's such a sweet guy. And a
well,
genius too. A genius.
that's the problem. We talked back during the campaign of how Robert De Niro has played so many tough guys that he actually thinks he's a tough guy now. Well,
Yes.
George Clooney has actually played a number of very intelligent characters, not the least of which is Edward R. Murrow, which is what he's reprising on Broadway now from the movie Good Night and Good Luck. But he's played so many intelligent characters, he actually thinks he's intelligent.
Oh no, I think that's 100%. And getting back to De Niro, I believed he was a tough guy. I mean, and then you see this
Maybe
five foot
40 years
two.
ago.
Yeah, and he looked his career. Not that he really cares, doesn't need the money. Check, please. But also, we talked about when we were talking about the first 100 days and getting into the Democrats and the media's head. I think it was perfect that he put the signs of the illegal alien criminals on the White House lawn. So basically, any reporter that's doing a live feed has to have them in the background. And it was really funny. MSNBC was freaking out, saying, "We need to gray them out, gray them out." It's just he just knows how to pull their lever.
Oh,
Hysterical.
he really does. And I mean, this is nothing new. Trump is known how to push their buttons, from day one. But he just gave an interview, and I'm not sure who this was. It's a reporter I've never heard of before. And I saw a clip of this interview, and Trump told the guy point blank, he said, "Look, you're lucky to be in the room with me. I don't have to do this interview."
It was
It
ABC.
was, well, it was ABC, but I don't know the name of the reporter. It's a
No, me
diff.
neither. I do. I recognize his face. It doesn't make a difference. Yes, he's one of their major
uh,
figures. Yes.
but this is what he's telling them. And the fact of the matter is, he's right, because he's going on all of these left leaning interviews and they're eating it up because it's the only thing that's getting them ratings.
True, 100%. And I do like the new cabinet's approach because, unlike the old, I think they were part of the swamp. I don't know if they were really all of them really on his side. That was kind of obvious. But these guys are very smart, like Bassett and others. They go on these shows with these talking heads. They had to get their head handed to them. Rubio kicked her ass on NBC Meet the Press, which, by the way, when I was a kid, actually used to be a real show. Now it's a joke. But yes, it is quite funny. Speaking of real shows, the president of 60 Minutes, producer of 60 Minutes, stepped down, and Scott Pelley, who I used to think was a real reporter, and over the last several years, I've dismissed that possibility, went on a tirade about how it was such an outrage. Yeah, okay, you edited Kamala's interview, you moron.
Right. See, the problem is Hollywood and the media are in denial about that. There was an article in the Hollywood Reporter. Now, Trump has, I believe it's a $6 billion lawsuit against 60 Minutes for election interference. And the Hollywood Reporter is saying nobody takes that lawsuit seriously because all they did was edit down an interview from 45 minutes to 20 so it fit in their
No, they
time
didn't.
slot, which they do all the time. Except that's not what they did, and the American people saw that. They literally changed the meaning of what she said through those edits. And the producer of 60 Minutes was the guy who was responsible for that. So it is not surprising that corporate was now slapping him down, saying, "No, we've got to rein you in." And the fact of the matter is, their parent company Paramount is in a merger deal with Skydance Entertainment. Now, whether or not the folks at 60 Minutes or the folks at CBS are fans of the Trump administration or they want to go after him, The head of Paramount, Sherry Lansing, knows full well that the Trump administration has to bless that merger. They can stop it with a say so. And she knows if she rocks the boat, that will happen because they decided, again, like the Democrats chose the wrong hill to die on. She's going, this is not the hill I want to die on. They did try to interfere in the election. There isn't a defense.
100%. And I do hearken back to now it's got to be 20 years. I'm sorry to say that, but I used to watch 60 Minutes religiously. I don't watch
So
it
did
at all. It's
I.
nothing to do with Trump. It sucks. It's a it's a political hack show, and it's lost all relevancy and very uninteresting. It's gotten on the boring train. How do you like that? But also, I want to ask Dr. Lotkin, our listeners, I'm sure, want to know your insights. We talked about the first 100 days, a lot of very positive things. Illegal immigration is practically zero. In fact, they say the guards, the border guards, are literally bored. There's nothing to do, which is a good thing. However, there is some economic news that's not exactly positive. The GDP or growth will shrank 0.3%, not a lot. However, inflation is down. And in fact, somewhere gas is less than $2, believe it or not. And consumer spending seems to be still strong. So a lot to digest there. But my little feedback is that part of that is just the Biden hangover, and part of that is uncertainty due to tariffs. I am not alarmed at it at this point. Give it more time. Your thoughts?
I'm not alarmed with it, although I honestly don't believe most of it has anything to do with the tariffs because this is for first quarter. It's January, February, March. We
True.
weren't even
Good one.
talking about the
Yes,
tariffs
very
yet.
good.
They might have been mentioned in late March, but that nothing had been put in place yet. And
It was not an
what
issue in late March.
right, it was not really an issue, but what people are not paying attention to, and I understand why they're not paying attention to it because it hasn't been a major indicator since the mid 70s, but now it's coming back to the forefront, is the credit utilization data. This is now incredibly important because when Biden pushed inflation to historic highs, people were relying on their credit cards to pay for groceries, to pay for necessities. Now, those credit card bills are not just coming due, they're overdue. And for a lot of people, those cards are maxed out. So they don't have another choice but to start pulling back on purchases.
Well done. And that's
Now,
why Trump refers it to a Biden hangover, which has some relevancy,
right.
obviously.
Now, of course, again, why hasn't this had relevancy before? Because the last time it might have been relevant was during the Great Recession, 2008, 2009. But we had low interest rates then. So you weren't paying 29% interest on that credit card, which makes that credit limit come up so much faster. And we
Correct.
haven't had the combination of higher interest rates and skyrocketing inflation since the
Since the
70s.
70s.
So that was why it was important then. That's why it's important now.
Are
But
you taking out your disco ball?
I am not taking out my disco ball.
There you go.
But it's, that, and that's something else though. Let's assume that the Biden administration years were very similar to the 70s, which they were. Well,
Yes, they were, in many ways.
look at what followed. The 80s were an economic powerhouse.
Boom. Yes.
And quite
Oh, man, let me put
frankly,
it in perspective. Hold on. Let me put it in perspective just for 2 seconds now. To put in perspective, I was out of college in 82, okay? Got my MBA in 88. Why do I mention that? Because anyone that was remotely capable had a job. Yes. In
Yes,
the corporate world. Yes.
yes.
100%. It was
The
a booming time.
the
The only way
80s
you
were
didn't have
an
a job
economic
if
boom.
if you didn't spell something on your resume correctly. Pretty much it. Yes.
And
So
now
yeah,
you
that's
but now you're seeing Donald Trump, who is just as pro business as Reagan is, but he's also taking steps to protect union jobs, which Reagan didn't do. So you combine those two things, you're looking at the possibility if these trade deals get done, and we already have word that one of them is completed. It's just waiting for the other party's leadership to vote to approve it. So we're starting to see them come out. Those start coming out. The economy is going to start booming like you haven't seen.
100% correct, and it'll be a broad brushed growth. It's not just going to be Wall Street and the elite. It will be more. It will actually maybe a resurgence of the middle class that we haven't seen since the 80s.
It's very possible. And you mentioned the stock market. I find it absolutely hysterical. Obviously, everybody has noticed the volatility in the stock market. Now, first of all, volatility is measured by the VIX index. And for quite a long time, the VIX index was about 15, which is very low for volatility. So people got used to that. Right after what Trump called Liberation Day, the VIX shot up to 60, which is fairly volatile. But now it's back down to 25. So the
And the stock
volatility,
market is fine right now.
yeah, the stock market keeps recovering. Yes, it's going back and forth, but it keeps recovering,
The
and it's
trajectory is up.
yes, it's going to recover what it lost. But more than that, you've got all of these Democrats yelling about what's going on in the stock market. And oh my God, people's 401ks. And yet, during Trump's first administration, when he would point to the successes in the stock market, the Democrats would say, oh, well, that's not indicative of anything. That's just the
It's for the
rich are
rich.
in this. Yeah, that's just for the rich. Now all
But
of
you
a sudden
didn't.
they're changing their tune.
Yes, but you bring up a very more than salient. That's why they're without a leader and basically crying wolf too many times. They've already lost credibility. If things solidify on Wall Street, the economy starts improving. Here's my prediction: Jeffrey L. Sherman. I am not the doctor, but I have this opinion. If things, which I believe they will, stabilize and start going up, and if on the global arena there's some movement in the Middle East and some positive aspects in Ukraine, I believe not only, and it's a pretty sure bet that the Republicans will keep and maybe gain in the Senate, but I believe they'll maintain a hold on Congress as well.
There is a very strong possibility of that. And in fact, most of the advanced polling shows that that's what will happen. Um, I mean, what we're seeing,
Will
though,
there be a come to Jesus meeting in the Democratic? I know they don't believe in God, but come to something meeting. I don't know.
I
Or will
don't,
they just go more radical? We're
yeah,
not radical enough.
I honestly don't know. I mean, again, if they go more radical, they're just going to lose more general elections. They may be able to pick up a seat here or a seat there, but right now, they're going to be tearing each other apart in the midterms because the far left is planning on primarying just about everybody and
Yeah,
trying to.
genius. Who's a boy genius they put in charge? Oh my God.
Yeah, it's
Whatever. Who cares? Brutal.
but
Well,
but
Doctor Lopkin, go ahead.
what they're doing though is they've been hanging on their hat One of the most recent polls said, Trump only had a 45, or in some it was down, actually all the way down to 39% approval rating. And it's like, see, America doesn't like him. The Democrats have a 23% approval rating.
Yeah, I don't believe that, not just because I'm biased or leaning one way or another. Polls are snapshots. People don't like disruptions. They hear what's going on. They think, oh, has this guy lost his mind? I bet if you do the polls 2 weeks from now, when things start evening out, he'll be more than fine.
Well,
Speaking of more than fine,
I
go
want
ahead.
to I want to see the polls that'll be taken right after the first couple of trade deals are announced.
That's what I'm saying. Yes, better done. Yes, you are correct. But Dr. Lopkin, that concludes another Carnivore Bites edition. Our listeners can contribute to the show, correct?
Yes, let's hear what you have to say. You can go to xvadio.com/connect. Message us and let us know your thoughts. You can also go to the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. Message us there. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites on the Carnivore Radio website, xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. See you next week.
We'll see you then.